Just a very quick introduction to statistics. Stats is simply a collection and analysis of numerical information. So we're taking numbers and we're trying to figure out, well, what do those numbers mean in context? So if we look at this particular poster here on the right-hand side, we see a whole bunch of different percentages. We want to figure out, well, who is actually going to be able to use this information? Okay, it says in this poster that the gaming industry in Canada already employs 14,000 people. Okay, and that it's worth $1.7 billion in direct economic activity. It tells us that 49% of gamers play on the computer, 34 of them play on some kind of console, 10% play on a handheld system, and 7% use a mobile device. So at the time of publication, these happen to be the facts. I would imagine that these statistics are no longer accurate, but for the sake of simplicity, let's assume that they are for now. Okay, so who is going to find this information useful? That's really the gist of this particular question. So let's actually break this information down into smaller pieces. So this section here says that the gaming industry employs 14,000 people and is worth $1.7 billion. Okay, so who might actually be interested in really big numbers like that in terms of like how many people are employed and how much it's actually worth? Okay, so I would argue that for this particular section of the poster, people who are really interested in this are likely to be people in the government. Okay, for purposes of taxes, for purposes of trying to get people retrained if they're looking for a second job and so forth. But certainly, that's something that the government is very interested in. They want to know that a certain industry is doing well and how well is it doing, and they use numbers to try and quantify just how well a certain sector of the economy is doing. If it's worth $1.7 billion, then people are probably going to want to get in on the action. They're going to want to get a piece of that $1.7 billion. So schools might be interested, universities and colleges, okay? Trying to get people to take different programs, whether that's a graphic arts program or a computer science program, some kind of marketing program to sell these video games to whomever is going to actually buy them. Okay, and certainly companies, software companies, are going to be interested in this information because $1.7 billion is a large chunk of change, and companies want, a piece of that action. They want to be able to participate. Okay, so various computer companies or software companies is probably a better description here. So software companies would be very interested in that information. Okay. If we look at the right-hand side, it tells us that we've got, kind of who's playing these games and how these games are being played. Okay. So various, hardware companies that make, keyboards or mice or consoles or controller devices and these kinds of things would be interested to know kind of how many people are playing these games to determine kind of what's the market, like how many consoles could I potentially sell if I know that 34% of people play on a console. Right now significantly more than 7% of people with a mobile phone use them to play a game of some kind. And so certainly cell phone companies have been designing phones to be more friendly for gaming purposes than they had originally. Okay, and so we've seen a massive transition in terms of the design of cell phones and their user interfaces and so forth over the years. Okay, so I would argue that retail stores that are selling these things, places like Best Buy, okay, so retailers would be really interested in this information. Hardware companies, okay, whether they make consoles or they make, it's a terrible way to spell companies. Let me try that again. Okay. Retailers, hardware companies, I should probably spell hardware correctly. An E in there. Advertisers, magazines, so forth, are going to want to know where the money is. Okay, so advertisers. Okay, so if you happen to subscribe to PC Magazine, or you go online and you're checking out cnet.com for the latest review of video games and so forth, those kind of folks are interested in this type of information. So statistics, probability, these kinds of bits of information are useful in real-world applications because they help to direct energy and money and capital and education and knowledge to different areas that will be best served by taking advantage of what people's preferences are.